One of the things that you guys have suggested to me to build while we're here in Wales has been a castle, because Wales has over 500 of them. So in this episode we're going to choose an appropriate one from real life to build, and we are going to build a castle. So welcome back to Europe in Detail, guys. I hope you're doing well, and I wanted to choose an appropriate castle for the series, and as much as I would have loved to have done like a massive hulking really flash one, it just wouldn't really fit the little village intimate sort of type vibe that we're going for. So I've decided to model this one off one in Wales called the White Castle. We can see here it's really unique in more ways than one, but it's going to fit into our series really well. There's lots of countryside around the castle here. It's not near any big town or any built up areas. So I reckon we just get to work straight away and start putting this in. So I want to build a little bit different in this episode as well. I'm going to obviously start with the moat, you've seen that here, but what I want to do is actually push on and finish all of the countryside around where we're going to put the castle before I build the castle. And the reason for that is I really want the castle to sort of be the last piece of the puzzle, if you know what I mean. It's the last thing that gets installed and then the entire area is finished. So we're going to install that in a little wee bit. In the meantime, a lot of the area around the castle is countryside. We also do a couple of little unique things, but most of it is just, I really want to make this as realistic looking as I possibly can. So that includes things like stone walls, wire fences, lots of grass and shrubs and bush, and of course this really cool moat, which was a big part of the reason why I chose this type of castle and this design. I really like the idea of the moat, and I've never built one in the game before. So just for your guys' information, I've got a second monitor and I have a picture of the castle up on that monitor, so I'm constantly checking where I'm at and how it's looking. And the first thing I noticed looking objectively is this moat or this castle has been built in sort of a natural valley. So obviously the moat's going to be man-made, but it's going to be made in a natural valley to reduce the amount of work that's going to be needed to be done, namely the removal of the dirt. But hey, I'm no historian, I could be completely wrong there, but for instance, I can't imagine trying to build a moat on top of a hill. I mean, that would be both insane and incredibly difficult to pull off. At the end of the day, I guess I'm really just following what I'm looking at here in these real life photos and shots. It should also be noted too that obviously I'm not building it like for like, not that countryside anyway, it's just I'm taking inspiration from it. And in terms of that inspiration, really the biggest thing I get out of it is the area is really varied. In some spots we've got bush coming right up to the edge of the moat, in other areas we've just got bare paddocks with a wire fence. And we've even got some like really beautiful sort of rural village type homes around here, and we're going to add some of those in as well, or really just one to be honest. But you'll have to wait a little bit before we get there. In the meantime, we're doing this beautiful countryside, and man, I just absolutely love doing this type of stuff. And it's actually quite easy to do the Wales sort of style country, to be honest, because the Wales or the Welsh countryside is very similar to New Zealand from all of the observations that I've made, except for obviously a few different or obvious differences. And of course I spent a lot of time building my New Zealand series, and I'm from New Zealand, so I'm sort of very familiar with this style countryside straight away. I wanted to add at least one of these beautiful rural UK homes. I definitely want to add a few more of these in future in the nearby surrounding area, but for now my hard drive couldn't take any more for this episode, so we're going to have to make do with just one. In game I'm using a couple of Rick 4000's beautiful English style buildings to sort of try and create an estate here. We're going to fence off a pretty generous size yard here and make it all beautiful, put some flowers in and make the grass look like it's been manicured and looked after. And for now it's sort of going to look like this is the only house on the road. But yeah, I want to change that in future. Maybe we could put a little place next door or something. Or maybe you guys have got a suggestion for this sort of area, what I could put in here maybe. But anyway, the last thing you'll see me do in this shot is put some trees along the edge of the moat to give the homes some privacy. Then I want to shoot back over to that estate we've made and detail it up a bit more, give it a bit of justice. So in terms of the detailing, there's really nothing too fancy here, it's just all the most appropriate things you would expect. Concrete paths, a place to park your cars out front of a garage maybe. Also there's like a firewood storage place and fences and gardens. And we're just so spoilt for like flowers and gardens now. Like the airport DLC came with some really, really beautiful new trees. And I'm pretty sure that's what I'm using here. And the fences look massive, the ones that I've used, but they're the wrought iron ones, and I think they're really appropriate. So I think with the fences I end up sinking them into the ground a little bit, because they were seriously like 10 feet high in game, which just looks so silly. So once I'd sort of sussed out all of that in the details, I can sort of hook up everything else that I need, because this is a functioning building. We're going to have real people live here, so I need to get some water in. And I think I also just cheat and put a little power sort of generator within the house, but I definitely want to run some power lines out here eventually to get that electricity out here sort of more realistically. I think the power lines would add something as well to the sides of the road. They're really missing at the moment. What you see me building here is, I wanted to make it look like maybe originally they redirected a nearby river to fill the moat, and now it really doesn't have a purpose, so it's sort of dried up and there's just these reeds and stuff showing where it used to be, but maybe in flood it sort of becomes a proper stream or whatever. So this area is pretty raw in terms of sort of countryside detailing. It's pretty untamed in here. However, as we get up closer to the roadside, we see some trees that have been planted, these bare ones here. These look really cool, I like these, so I've put them in a formation, so yeah, it looks like they've been planted along the roadside. I'm pretty keen to introduce like an untamed vibe out here in this countryside. So you might see like grass sort of growing over the edge of the road and around the bottom of the fence posts and things like that. There also might be like damaged roading, especially around the edges, you know, a few cracks and stuff, and maybe the grass is growing around those areas. And it may seem really like superficial, and maybe it is, but I think all of this sort of helps definitely sort of capture that more realistic vibe that we're going for. You'll also see me spend a bit of time with like the intersection marking tool, just making these intersections look a bit more realistic. I think because of the nature of the road out here, no pun intended, there would probably only be minimal markings. So I'm just going to look to keep these markings pretty simple. So while you guys watch me finesse the various obstacles in the sort of coming minutes, I'd like to talk a little bit about the future of the series. So after this episode we've got one more in Wales, and that will be Wales wrapped up, and then we're going to return back to the UK, and I reckon there's probably at least 2 or 3 more episodes in the UK, really good episodes as well, before we wrap that up. Now it's at that point there that I am considering taking a break from the series just for a little wee bit, because I really want to wait for the right inspiration and the right spark for the next place. But I definitely want your guys' suggestions as well. This is part of the reason why I think I may have a little break for a while at that point, because if I can get some good suggestions from you guys, potentially I can sort of digest the best ones, and it sort of just may help me broaden my horizons and give me more options to choose from in terms of countries or whatever it may be. And I know that it's worth waiting for that right spark, wherever it may come from, because yeah, I need to be inspired to do these places properly. I think I definitely sort of don't want to half-ass anything, that's for sure. But anyway guys, we are getting really close to building the castle, the crowning jewel, so I'll leave you with the last few bits I'm doing, just putting some flowers and stuff around mainly around the car park, and then yeah, we're going to get into building this castle. Most of the construction of the castle is going to be with procedural objects. It's just going to give me far more control over the entire design basically. And it's actually really only going to consist of 3 or 4 parts in total. So we can see here that White Castle has these 6 turrets, or maybe turrets isn't the right word, I'm not sure if that's right or not, but it's got these 6 round structures basically with walls sort of linking them really, and that's kind of it, at least for this part of it. And I guess that's part of the reason why I chose it. It's a really simple design, but it looks so good. It's such an effective design. It's very striking, you know, with the moat around it and being sort of raised up on this mound and whatnot. So anyway, I'll use procedural objects to get those turrets or those round structures in a, you know, the basic shape that I need to, and then I can link them with these walls. Half of the props that I'm using here are vanilla, and the other half are just, I think, just come from a modular castle pack on the workshop. And the number one theme that I'm going for with all of these props is I want them to look broken. They've got to look like they've been smashed up and they're, you know, pretty ancient. Next, I want to put some like grass props around the outside of the castle. This is quite a striking feature when we look in real life, because there's a really cool contrast between the really long grass out here and the well manicured grass within the castle walls. So originally I used the same grass prop all the way round, but then I changed it because it looks way too manufactured, like it doesn't look realistic at all. In real life here we see different types of grass in this area with various shrubs and bushes in other areas as well, so it just wasn't looking right. And I'm pretty desperate to do this castle full justice. Like I want this to be the best castle I've ever built, and I've never built one like this admittedly, but yeah, I just want to get as much of it right as I can. So in the end, that long grass on the outside, I use a new grass. I think it's from Abigator. That name's probably wrong, I'm terrible with names, but the grass is called landscaping grass on the workshop and it's brand new, so go and grab that, it is awesome. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up. So next we're going to push to the interior of the castle walls, and it is very simple in here indeed. It just really is manicured grass with a few ruins, and that's kind of it. There's nothing fancy in here, there isn't even a bench to sit on. It pretty much is just the castle ruins speak for themselves. You don't come here to do anything other than check out the castle. Speaking of coming to the castle, I add some pedestrian paths here, so obviously we can get real citizens coming and checking this out in game. The ones that I put down within the castle walls get turned invisible, and this one here going across the moat, I think I used just the vanilla pathway, the gravel one, but turn it to a bridge, and it's got like a cool old school wood look to it, which was perfect I thought. And then eventually I'll put an entertainment cube over here to draw people over into this part of the castle. So now, with all of the background done and stuff, we're going to get a nice cinematic view of this last part of the castle build. Let's move over and outside of the moat area, and out here we're going to use much the same method that we used for the first part of the castle. We're going to use exactly the same bits even, they're just a little bit smaller out here. And aside from the moat, this was another part of the design that I was really intrigued by, this sort of 2 parts to the castle type of thing. And this part of it out here, like I mentioned, has smaller walls, but it's actually a bigger overall area, and it looks like they have a few picnic tables and stuff in this part of the castle as well. So most of this castle so far has been pretty much like for like. Well, at least the actual castle, maybe not so much the surrounding countryside. But this is where I'm going to break that mold a little bit and do the only thing that really isn't in real life, and that is the entrance is on the opposite side to what it is in real life. And I wasn't really that bothered about this, and I'm still not, because it fits much better in our little map here around this way. And I think as long as we stick true to that basic design, then this isn't really going to alter too much. So let's move in now and detail it up a bit. And the first thing I do is run this rather plain looking wooden fence around the outside edge of the moat, and then I can put grass between that fence and the water. This is obviously the area that they cannot or will not maintain. I should mention as well that I used node controller on that pedestrian path to make it about 70% its original width, so it's a little wee bit more narrow. So I finish off this grassy bank here with a few shrubs and different sorts of reeds and things like that, and then I can carry on this pedestrian path around the new part of the castle we've made. So I'll use the vanilla pedestrian paths to get them in the right area, and then just change them invisible later on. And some of the smaller details you'll see me do here are just little signs here and there that give information. And I also use procedural objects to make a sign with the name of the castle on it, and I'm just going to call it White Castle because I've kept it so close to the original. I think we wouldn't be doing it due justice if we named it, Dirty Castle or something. So White Castle it is. And you'll also see me put down like picnic tables and stuff, and some of them are prop ones and the white ones are actually real ones, and if I put them close to the pedestrian paths we put in, we should get real citizens come and sit down at these tables and just enjoy the view. Before we move into some really beautiful cinematics, let's put this car park in here and really finish this castle right off. And this is rather self-explanatory, it's a car park. It's got a fence around it, and you can park your car here. Yep. With such a perfect blend of nature and history and architecture, I don't think I could have been any more in heaven doing a build than I was doing this castle. I think it's blended into the surrounding countryside absolutely superbly. I also think that we've made the area look really interesting, introducing different varieties of things like thick bush in places, big open fields in others, and like hidden little rural homes just poking their heads out. And with that, we are done with this episode, guys. Thank you so much for coming on this journey with me, and I will see you later. Peace.